credit card.
Okay, we're on.
I'm using first names.
You don't travel.
I don't, no. Harold.
No.
I can't have two checkbooks at the same account. Doesn't work.
Okay, at 7 p.m. on November 27th, I'll bring the Board of Selectmen's meeting to order, starting with a roll call from my right.
Paul Anderson.
Justin Duraki.
Vaughn Morgan,
Jim Ralston. Chip Hussey.
and we have a quorum, and the meeting is being recorded. Okay, under appointments, we have Chief Cresta with us, along with MRI, who is engaged by the town to conduct an operational assessment of the Greenland Fire Department. I just want you to know that access to this document should be made available to any resident wishing to access it. I'm sure we'll be able to do that.
We posted the link to it on our website and on the Facebook page, but not the entire document because it just doesn't, it's too big.
Just too big. Okay.
It's way big.
All right. So I'm assuming we all had a chance to read through this assessment and would note that it pretty much recommends the actions that this board included in the 2018 budget for staffing and goes on to make other recommendations to consider. So I'm going to ask the representative from MRI if they would like to make some comments along with Chief Cresta.
Sounds good. I'm Brian Duggan, Director of Fire Services for MRI, and with me is Gary Lamoureux. We are both recovering fire chiefs. Done this sort of on a part-time and now for me on a full-time basis. I actually spent 28 years as a fire chief in 2 different organizations in Massachusetts. And Gary, you want to talk a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I don't usually do that, though. I'll give it a
Okay.
shot. I spent 35 years at the Keene Fire Department. I stayed in one location and started as a call firefighter, worked my way into a fire chief position. And I was a fire chief for the last 10 years there, emergency management director as well as assistant city manager. And currently I'm a city councilor in the city of Keene, working on my second run at it.
Good for you. God bless you.
At least 15 of us. It was only 5
That's
years.
right. And a brand new manager, yeah. And Elizabeth Dragon is your brand new manager.
She is.
So what I'd like to do with the chair's permission is sort of give you an overview of what we endeavored to do and some of the key findings, and then certainly answer any questions that the chief and or the board has as we conclude. So first of all, what we tried to do is look at this from a risk management perspective. And what a risk management perspective really does is look both internally and externally, look at the operations of the department, how do they compare to other comparables, to industry standards and best practice, and then look externally at the community. And I think some of the most striking things we found is Greenland is not really comparable to a lot of similar size population demographic communities. And some of those issues that we found is just the rate of residential development, the idea that 55 and older communities are coming in, increased commercial development sort of along that corridor, and then the presence of a moderate propane facility, the interstate, and a large quantity of hazardous materials in general. And certainly those all combine to really come together and make what we look at as a risk profile. And all in all, we saw that Greenland had a moderately higher risk than most similar communities that we've seen. And that then reflects on how the department needs to be organized, staffed, and prepared to deal with that. So that caused us to really review the target hazards in the community and form the basis of much of the report. And I'm going to ask Gary to talk about sort of what the report consisted of and then some of the methodologies that we utilized.
Thank you. Well, in order to provide you with this report this evening, there had to be a scope of service or some type of a listing that we had to look at to move forward so that we could provide this community with the recommendations, first of all, and also to identify where the needs would be. So first of all, we had to identify the service needs of this community, and as you heard from Brian, some of those target hazards are some of those service needs, as well as what your future is going to bring for the town of Greenland. Identify all of the public safety risks. There is some risk here in this community. What fire service usually looks at is there's different types of risk, and you do have some that are low frequency, which creates a high risk situation for the community. Assess the current plan for deployment and response and how your vehicles and apparatus are responding, how the chief responds as personnel. There's another area we looked at. Identify the required staffing levels is one of the reasons we're here this evening to talk about that, and you'll hear more in a few minutes about staffing. You want to evaluate the service options in mutual aid. It appears that you have a pretty good mutual aid pact with your surrounding towns with automatic aid, which is tremendous. You have a city next to you that has the apparatus and the equipment and personnel that can help you provide, but we did find that you do provide quite a bit of service, mutual aid service, to those communities as well, which is a great asset to them as well. Believe me, working in a city, you still don't have the amount of personnel and the equipment that you need, so you're still relying on your mutual aid pact.
So in terms of mutual aid, we found that it was a reciprocal relationship, but that it really strikes at sort of industry best practice, that a lot of places talk about automatic aid, which means that when someone places a call that there's a fire or serious incident, that not only the resources in one community, but the resources that are appropriate or positioned well from other communities would automatically respond. Many places we'll go to and they'll tell us, oh, we use automatic aid. And when we look into that, it's, well, if the building's burning and we pull up out front and we need help, we call. Here, it's different. It's from that first call, from the positioning of units, and there is an immediate sort of regional response that really strikes at industry best practice. And I think a lot of that is a credit to the Seacoast fire chiefs and what they've put together.
Thank you. We wanted to look at evaluating your current and planned vehicle apparatus replacement. We do have a program in place for your capital improvement program, which is very, very good for planning and processes for the town, but it's also good for the fire service and the fire chief to be able to understand and know that he has the support of the local selectmen to be able to move forward with those types of replacements. The evaluation of departmental policies and procedures that impact efficient fire operations, both for fire and EMS. Very important that those are currently and constantly reviewed, because things change. Responses change, personnel change, equipment changes, so you have to continually look at those things. And a review of the EMS service provided by the town. You do have a paramedic level service here with one ambulance. You'll see some recommendations in here of down the road of what some of the things might be to enhance that, to be able to try and bring forward some additional revenue to be able to bring it in not only to the EMS service, but you can bring it in towards the fire service as well. So with that, we looked at the methodologies. There's 8 aspects of the methodology that we looked at. Come to your town to look at things. One is we took a tour of your community. The chief took us around to many of the areas. We looked at some high hazard areas. We looked at your little over 13 square miles of area that you have. You have some things in this town that others don't have, and you have some things that are very similar to other towns. But you do have a risk. I mean, you're building a high-end residential area behind us. There's a considerable amount of call base that could be added to the fire department with those properties. So with that tour, we looked at the evaluation of the target hazards that Brian brought forward, and also what Cresta had brought forward to Brian to be able to review. Another important portion of this is the review of the fire rescue facility that's attached to this building. We found some deficiencies within that system. We found some areas where it may get in the way of response times, which you'll hear a little bit more about too as well. Review of mutual aid response agreements and practices. Brian just spoke a little bit about that. There's a difference between mutual aid and automatic aid. Very difficult to get automatic aid because that's a town automatically responding to your town from first call. Mutual aid is, again, when you show up on scene and you request additional help, then they respond. So there is a delay in time between those, and the automatic aid definitely is best practice. Review of the fire apparatus and equipment. I can say that we did do a review. It was nice to see that the vehicles were well maintained. They're in decent shape, a really good shape actually. And it's nice to see that the town is continuing to support the needs of the fire department and get the equipment that is necessary, which does improve the safety for the firefighters in the community. We met with the Greenland Police Chief, again discussing things with her and the chief. It was nice to see again the relationships that you have with your department heads. They support each other, and I can tell you that from what I saw, that they definitely support this town and they do whatever they can to make it efficient and the best that they can and provide the service that they do to this community. Evaluation of the Greenland Fire Department SOPs, which are the standard operating procedures. Again, another one of those things that there are some in place. Those are things that have to be constantly reviewed to make sure that when practices change, they change within your standard operating guidelines. And the data review, which basically information that was sent to MRI to look at all of your response times and those types of things. Found a few deficiencies in that system, which I think we'll talk a little bit later on here in the presentation. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Brian.
Thank you. So a couple of things that Gary said deserve some additional comments. One is we looked at apparatus. Not only was it well maintained and really quality apparatus, but it was some of the most organized from tools and equipment that we've seen. And we can only surmise that comes from sort of the chief and his personality, that it was truly sort of pushed down into the organization, that organization is important, being ready to do the job is important, and I think that truly comes from leadership. Another thing that we saw is, again, the relationship between the fire chief and police chief. We've done more than 100 of these studies, and I have to tell you that is not always the case that it's a supportive relationship. We have gone to communities where the fire chief and police chief won't even speak to each other. Probably some of the reason why they brought us in there, but beyond that, I think what we saw was really a very positive and cooperative relationship that should be pointed out to the board as something that's exceptional. So in general, we had a number of observations that we made about the department. First of all, it's an excellent fire rescue organization. The chief has really done a good job putting a department together and keeping it moving forward in a progressive way. But the department is certainly at an operational crossroads, and we'll get into that a little bit more. It certainly requires sort of an investment from the community and support from the community to continue to provide the level of service that we'll talk about in a minute. In terms of the fire facility, we look at a fire facility as basically a platform from which an organization provides service to the community. And it lacks much of the fundamental infrastructure and components that are present in modern fire facilities. And we found it to be one of the more dysfunctional fire facilities that we've seen among the various studies that we've done. And we'll get more into that as well. Certainly, one of the things that should be mentioned is I know Chief Cresta is a part-time employee, but in our dealings with him, his passion and enthusiasm sort of eclipsed that part-time role. And he did point out to us that he has several challenges. Moving beyond some of those personal challenges, we'll look at sort of the administrative and the staffing, the supervisory challenges that he faces on a part-time basis. And we've tried to, within the report, come up with some strategies that would help the town move forward and help the chief. One of the things we suggest is as the department begins sort of this transition or transformation, that you do anything possible to retain the leadership of the chief to guide you through that over the next couple of years. So, in terms of level of service, a community really defines the level of service. You could have 3 fire stations in Greenland, you could have more apparatus, more personnel. That all comes with a cost. And in essence, through the budget process and through community interaction and town meeting, a community defines what is an acceptable level of service. And based on our review of the data provided, our field visit here, we've found that the community has come to expect a level of service of 1 unit responding rapidly on a 24/7 basis. And of late, that has become challenging, especially on the emergency medical service side, where calls over the past couple of years have risen fairly dramatically. And that has challenged the organization to the point that we believe the organization needs to change that staffing pattern and start to move toward at least a couple of full-time people over time. Some of the symptoms that we saw for that transformation, or that would lead us to that conclusion, was over the past couple of years, a number of calls have been what we call scratched or missed and assigned to other agencies. And in 2016, 9.4% of calls were in that category, that they were assigned to other agencies. And certainly the chief has moved forward, bringing on-call people in at night and trying to do everything he can to sort of prevent that from happening. But unless there is sort of forward momentum on the on-call recruitment and retention side, and then through creating some career staffing that has some administrative capability, we feel that will continue to be an issue. Response time. So Greenland is a fairly small community in terms of square mileage, yet we found that response times average between 8 and 12 minutes. The NFPA 1720 standard, which applies to on-call and volunteer departments, looks at about a 10-minute average response time. So right now, the response time through the data we got, and there were certainly some challenges and flaws within the data system that exists, and that goes to some of the staffing and supervision aspects, I think. But we found that there was an average response time of 11.5 minutes. So it's above that 10-minute threshold. Being above that 10-minute threshold, we look at it as something that needs to be sort of addressed over time. And then the lack of administrative capability. We already talked about some of the issues with the records management system. The ability to continually recruit and train on-call personnel needs to be something that's strengthened within the organization. And certainly developing more of an internet social media footprint, both for the benefit of the community and for the recruitment side, are things that are important that the chief does not have the current capacity to complete. So again, some of the more striking things, we already mentioned mutual aid and how important that is. And in essence, that is a critical success factor to operations within the community right now. And a takeaway is certainly that while the fire side is pretty level in terms of service, the community clearly trusts the department, because usually we see about 70% of the calls being emergency medical in nature. Here, there's more of a 50-50 split, and what that tells us is that the community is reaching out to the department in different ways, and the department is also reaching out to the community to provide sort of additional services. But we also do see that EMS volume is increasing fairly dramatically based on the development in the community, and that's another sort of reason why we view the department at a crossroads. So moving forward, the department should really focus on a couple of key things. One is the reduction of response times. Two is recruitment and retention of on-call personnel, always a challenge in any organization, but especially as you enter the transition between on-call or volunteer and partially career, that becomes really important to focus on that. And the develop of a more formalized training program, again, with the administrative capacity that would come with some additional staffing. Certainly, we recommend, and the report talks about sort of the size and some of the components of a comparable or suitable fire facility. We feel that that's something that should move forward rapidly, that the department is constrained in terms of space. It's constrained in terms of ability to serve the community based on a number of items that are lacking within the current facility. Built in 1978, I believe, and certainly not of adequate size to house a modern fire rescue agency and provide them the resources that they need. So certainly, again, we saw the chief as sort of, although he's a per diem employee, we felt his energy, enthusiasm, and passion eclipsed that, and that he has really brought forward an excellent organization. So one of the takeaways, again, is as you transition to a partially paid organization, which we're recommending the addition of 2 full-time firefighters or full-time personnel, that there be an emphasis placed on maintaining a strong on-call presence, and that more effort be put into the recruitment and retention of those people. And we wrote a whole chapter on that, providing different ideas. Some of those ideas we were talking about that 10 years ago would have been looked at as absolutely crazy. If they can help you produce an effective and efficient response at a value, those ideas are no longer crazy. So that there are a number of things. You need to sort of sift through the report because there are things that will work in one community that may not be appropriate or palatable in another. For example, some communities provide on-call firefighters with a tax incentive. Other communities will say that's not appropriate in this community, in this state, because of legislation or whatever. But there are different things that you could do to recruit and particularly retain a strong on-call presence. And while you're moving toward a combination organization, there needs to be a sufficient on-call staff to really provide the level of service that's needed in conjunction with mutual aid response. So in terms of recommendations, we probably wrote too much. I think we ended up at about 60 pages and 14 chapters once we get going. We produced 53 recommendations that you should consider. We view a report as a success if it sort of starts that discussion. We've seen reports where upwards of 80% of the recommendations get implemented over time. And we certainly recommend that there's sort of a paced approach to those and a measured approach where ideas are discussed and then brought forward for action over a period of time. So I'm going to turn it back to Gary for the next section.
Sure. As you've heard, you as a town and the fire service are definitely at that crossroad where many other towns have had to face those decisions as to move forward with full-time personnel or try to find other ways. And you know, when you're at this point where you start to hire per diem personnel and those types of things, you're already talking about it. You're already on that way to be able to find ways to be able to provide service to your community. So right now, there's an opportunity that exists for the town of Greenland to be able to invest in the fire department, and that is to ensure that the response expectations are met. And that is one of the things that the fire service is rated on is their response. And you also have to remember that the fire personnel that are responding to those calls want to get there as quick as they can as well to be able to assist people, because it's always devastating when you show up somewhere and if you only had that extra minute. And unbelievably, most of you have probably seen a building fire or a fire, how quick they move. So if you have that extra minute, it's always that in the mind of the firefighter to be able to justify that. So you as a town is growing rapidly from my standards when you look at the development that's going on. So the recommendations that Brian had just mentioned, one is that it's, we're recommending at this point that you hire 2 full-time personnel. And that would be to form support operations, not only to the on-call department, but also to supply some supervision for the daily staff that are here, so that Chief Crester can't be here every minute of the day to be able to supervise those personnel, to be able to make sure things are getting completed. So those 2 full-time personnel would be able to supervise during the daytime, even with the per diem people here and the on-call people. Would be able to have somebody here to supervise that the chief could actually entrust in his operation. It would definitely expand his administrative capacity here in the department, which you are lacking during the daytime. You do have some officers that are here in the chain of command, but again, they're not here on a daily basis or an hourly basis. One of the recommendations is that if you take one of those full-time members that are here during the daytime or on shift, help with recruitment and retainment efforts. They'd be able to work on that during the daytime or during their shift to be able to help move that forward. And the other second full-time person would definitely be advantageous to be able to have the social media out there. That's big today. That's how you attract younger people. That's how they look at things. And getting information out to your community. Many of the people in your community are using social media now. So it's a good way to be able to put forward what's going on in the fire department as well. One of the bigger things, as well as the staffing, as Brian has talked about, is your fire facility. There are many deficits within that facility. It's done its job for the time that it was built, but you are seeing a lot of deficit within it. You are seeing code issues. When you're having your people living in these quarters and also being attached to your facility, where people in this part of the building could be receiving carbon monoxide from those vehicles, those types of things. So there's a lot of safety issues that you have to look at with that. There's response issues that you could actually increase your times, just location of the building and how it's set. Having the space so that it's safer for those vehicles to go in and out. So there's a lot of talk or discussion that you're going to have as regards to that. But our recommendation at this point is that you would locate another facility, 10 to 12,000 square feet, to be able to have the space needed to be able to put all your equipment in, to be able to have a space to have your all of the structural firefighting gear in an area that's not outside in ultraviolet light and receiving any type of chemicals from the trucks, because that will deteriorate them, as well as having an extractor to be able to clean the gear that you have here. So there's a lot to the building portion of this as well as the staffing, but you need to consider that. And as we said earlier, and I'm glad I got Brian in between me here, the community should definitely recognize the leadership that you have here. It is very hard to find a leader running the organization that puts the time in that Chief Presta does. It is difficult. He's running his own business as well, I'm sure, but it is difficult to be able to put that amount of time in, but he finds the time to do that. And he uses his own equipment, his own vehicle to be able to move back and forth and those types of things. He spends a lot of time trying to keep the vehicles in the condition that they're in, which is definite cost savings to the community in the long run. So we'd ask the chief that he does stay here, that you find a way to be able to keep him here through this process, because you're going to need consistency when you do start to move forward. And you as a board will have somebody here that you know and trust that can help you move that forward.
And then also as part of that is really ask the chief to develop a succession plan over the next few years so that there are people and resources in place that can move up in the organization over time. So that's equally important and part of that whole transition to a combination organization. So that's sort of the report in a very quick nutshell, and we're happy to answer any questions on the document.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate your report and your assessment. It was very well thought out, I think. Covers most of the areas that we can think of. One of the areas that we're trying to, I know when Ralph and I talk, his response time is one of his biggest issues. One of the things that we're trying to do right now is go through the E911 changes. And I don't know if you want to know anything about that, but it's like sitting up here at a board and being shot at. Nobody likes changes. So,
Yeah.
you know, I think that's going to help in the long run also. But a very good report, very good assessment, I think. Any comments from the board or questions?
I guess the one that we've talked about for a long time is, what can we do to prevent us from becoming just a training ground where we bring folks in, put them through all the various points of education, only to see them leave full-time somewhere else?
Well, sometimes being that training ground is not necessarily a bad thing, in that the department is well respected and you bring people up through. But I'd say as you sort of transition, consider the sort of area wage and benefit package. There are really two reasons that firefighters and paramedics will sort of migrate from one place to another. One is sort of working conditions, wages, and benefits. So the station becomes part of that. The wages and the benefits they receive, especially in a smaller organization, are key. But then the other reason is the level of activity also will draw some people. I know I had several people work for me that they went to the city of Worcester or Boston Fire or FDNY and so forth, that's the life they wanted. And you're not going to stop all that. And it should be looked at as rather positive that you'd have people that those larger agencies would pick because they're so well trained as well. So some of it you can control, some of it you can't control.
Did you ever try to have contractual restrictions where if we pay for something that they have a sort of a tiered payback, the longer you stay here, the less you have to pay us back?
Yeah, the typical sort of example of that is paramedic training, that if you sponsored someone to go to become a paramedic, that if they left within a period of time, they would have to pay back the tuition and so forth. Other agencies will actually sort of provide that as a bonus once they complete a period of time. And it's probably easier to do that than try and get something back.
Okay.
As an incentive. So if someone was sponsored by you for firefighter 1-2 certification or for paramedic training, that they'd agree to stay, say, 2 years, and at the end of that, they'd get the full cost of the tuition and fees and so forth. Some would argue that they're going to need that up front. Some agencies do it up front, some agencies do 50-50, and some do it at the end. But I think that is also an ongoing discussion with the industry that, there's also a generational thing that people are more apt to move and change not only their location, but careers in general, is I think what we've seen, and some of those strategies help you retain people.
Okay.
Chester, any?
I have no questions, no, great report, a lot to think about, but very, very thorough, I mean, nothing.
And we're certainly available to the chief after this, that, if he needs something clarified or some research done, pick up the phone and we're willing to help out.
Great.
Jim?
Well, I think it's very refreshing to hear both sides come in and kind of reinforce what we already thought we knew, that the chief is doing an excellent job working with what he has. I do have a question as to what's the average, or what are the major problems when you bring in paid people against interacting with the volunteers that are already there? Does that create any special problems that we need to look out for?
So it depends how you manage it. If it is not managed and you bring in a couple of paid people and that goes to 4 paid people, then there starts to be sort of this who's on top, who's more important. In my view, and I spent 35 years as a career fire service member, and now I'm a volunteer chief officer in my local hometown. I look at it that a firefighter is a firefighter, and it's more their training and skill that comes into play than their position. So I think you need to be cognizant of that there can be tensions that develop. And perhaps the best way is from the start, you set the expectation that this is a on-call agency that has a career component to support that effort. And that's why we think it's really important that not only are the career people that are going to be hired there to support the chief and provide that administrative capability, but one of them would be in charge of recruitment and retention, and their performance evaluations would be based on how well did they do. Another one would be doing social media and training and things like that. So there's really the idea that they need to be the supporting role at this point in time in the organization's history. When you start changing the function of what an on-call firefighter does, you will find tremendous attrition. So, for example, if you put 4 people in the station 24 hours a day, and I know that's a lot, in essence, the vast majority of what the on-call people do now for response on the ambulance and response to, say, a car fire is going to change from a primary role to a secondary role. And when that happens and the organizational function and sort of structure changes, that's when you tend to have sort of major problems that I know as a volunteer firefighter, if someone puts a fire out before you get there, that's often not a good thing. So they're passionate. They want to do the job. And you don't want to usurp that unless there is really a service deficit that demands it. We don't see that service deficit here. What we see as the need to invest in sort of support the organization as it goes forward.
If I might add, I come from a combination department, and there are times it can be difficult. We've been a career department since 1901 with a call force with it. So that's why it's very important for the consistency of the leadership, especially the leadership that you have here now, because you know what that leadership is, to set that culture. As to say that when those people come through the door, it takes work that you have to set that culture to make sure that everybody does do what they're supposed to do. And that's why it's really important that you have that consistency with the chief, especially now.
Yeah.
Good
question, Jim. Chip?
No,
Any comments?
not right now, no.
No? Okay. We have our chairman of the budget committee sitting here, and we also have an expired chief and a member of the budget committee. And so I'm going to ask you if you have any questions for these gentlemen?
I personally, I read this twice. I had to read it twice to make sure I was reading it the first time. I like your ideas.
Does that say it was really boring?
No. This is something that we've been facing. Ralph, myself, Chairman, Mr. Morgan, and even our administrator. We've been talking about this for the last 3 or 4 years. We knew that eventually someday we're going to have to face this. Okay. That's going to be a major concern. We're a very small town. A lot of us, including me, we're on a fixed income.
Yep.
Okay? So we're going to be careful with the dollars, as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
But I like your ideas. It was very well put together. And it's something we're going to have to discuss in length. There's no question about it. You know?
Yep.
We'll see what happens.
And it would have been easy for us to say that there should be more of an investment with more career staff, but that's again when we get to the other question of how does it affect the organization as a whole, and we think things need to be paced and sort of go slow and preserve the volunteerism and the on-call nature of the organization.
Another thing I found is that you have to realize there are more than one thing that needs to be done in this town. Not only
Absolutely.
this, there are other things that we're looking at, so we got to be careful where we're going to put our priorities and where we're going to put our monies.
Yep. And that goes back to the level of service. Each community determines that level of service. Often it boils down to the resources provided. I think you said it very well that the chief has made do with what he's had. And in essence, we feel that there needs to be that investment to give him the resources to maintain that level of service we talked about.
No question, he's done a hell of a job. I've known Ralph for a long time, and he does very well for what he has. He does very well.
And I guess just for the benefit of the community, not that I think this is a good idea at all, but do you have any comments of what would happen if our fire department just closed and went dark?
Good question.
And not that I'm advocating it, but I'd just like people to understand what we're looking and risking if that were to happen.
So as part of the study, we looked at not only the mutual aid and the automatic aid part of things, but sort of what would happen sort of regionally. So if the department was ceased to exist, you'd either find one or two things. Either you'd settle for a far different level of service in terms of response time and fire loss and emergency medical consequences, or you'd be facing contractual relationships, whether it's a private ambulance company or a regional fire services put together. The cost would probably far exceed what you're paying now to maintain sort of the same level of service. So we felt overall that the department really provides an exceptional value to the community right now, but we saw threads that the department is struggling to do so and needs that support to continue to provide that one unit response 24/7 in a rapid way.
On that same line, I've talked to people in the insurance industry, and if a town doesn't have a fire department, your property taxes, or your insurance rates rather, are probably going to go up significantly. You were probably about to say that.
Well, I was just going to mention that you definitely, your ISO rating will change within the community, along with, you'd probably have a difficult time with people getting a mortgage due to the fact that there is no, the coverage would be a distance away, or if you were to have to hire in. Now, if you hired in and had as Brian said, you had a private agency running your service here in town. We looked at that actually in the city of Keene when we were looking at reorganizing back in '08. And we were gonna almost triple the cost of our budget just to run that operation with somebody else running it, and you lose control of what you have.
Right.
And sometimes that offer can be deceiving in that an organization will come in and sort of low bid things or charge nothing to start with. But once you lose the capability to provide it, and then you have to rely on them, the costs go up. And I know in one community where I was chief, we asked for a third ambulance, which would more than pay for itself based on volume. And we got the idea back that it would be over $500,000 to provide that unit for one additional unit, even though the volume was there to support it at zero increase.
I just want to echo what Juan just said, because I am in the insurance business. And this part of town here, okay, has got a different rating
Right.
than that part of town.
Yeah.
Their premiums are very, very high compared to what I'm paying.
Yeah.
So, you know, even though it's because of the water
Right,
shortage,
public
Right.
water
that in
versus
time,
wells.
Right.
all right?
So within the report, there's a whole section on the insurance service office rating, the various components of it. And most communities have a rating that's sort of bifurcated, that you have one number and then a number with a letter after it, and that represents the area out of the water district. You certainly have a significant area out of the water district, not unlike many New Hampshire communities of the same size. But I think the first thing that you'd see is if the department went away, especially your commercial and industrial base, where it's not set on a banded rating system, it's set individually based on property, would see their insurance rates go up tremendously.
Not only that, but I've been talking with Ralph for a couple of years about this. I don't know why the state does not recognize the cisterns that we have in the area that hold 30,000 gallons of water. Doesn't take 30,000 gallons of water to put out a fire. Come on. But they will not recognize it. Why?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, hey, Ralph, that's what you told me.
Yeah.
Thanks, Bob.
But I'd say take a look at the insurance service office section and just reflect on that. And that looks at risk in the community as well.
Don? Any questions, comments?
December 1987, I think I proposed something quite similar, only it was a single full-time captain that would run the department from internally, and the rest of it would come out of call. And those were the days when people who moved to town were families with usually only one person working the other home. We were able to recruit women into the service because we had just started up ambulances, and things have got so much better and improved, and things are going a lot faster, and if I gotta pay for it, I gotta pay for it. So it's still, you know, I'm 100% supportive of the whole proposal. I know it's gotta come. I know we need a new building for it. I just gotta sit here now and weigh between whether that's more important than the library. So when it comes to the, you know, to the actual voting, or maybe I'll even vote for both. I don't know.
Oh,
Yeah, there you go. So
You're doing CPR on Bob right now.
My certification is gone.
And those are the decisions you need to make on a local basis. But in general, the chief's comment, that it is much harder to find people that want to serve and have the time to serve. And there's in the report, again, a whole section sort of on recruitment and retention that talks about some of those reasons that people aren't as available as they used to be. But also, for every 5 people that come in the door, if you go 2 years out, there's about 2 of them that are left. So there's a lot of investment in training and turnout gear and everything else to get 2 people. But you still need to do that because that's sort of the nature of the department. And I think to throw away that on-call system would be a disservice to the community.
Okay, Chief, any comments?
Nope, I'm just happy they did the thorough report on it. I also feel the department's pretty lucky that the paramedics we do have, we did not have to pay for one of them. They all come from different departments, or they get
Military.
certified through the government. So we've been pretty lucky in that.
All right, well, we had a lot to consider, and we've got a lot of good ideas and information from the report that you submitted, and we appreciate your coming here tonight. Does anybody else have any questions they would like to ask these gentlemen? Go ahead.
Dennis Malloy. A couple,
He, by the way, is our state representative.
Thank you.
Okay.
You just finished up here by making a comment about the finding and retaining people, and we've been talking about that. Does Greenland have any different, phrase this another way, looking at our staffing and turnover, meaning people leave here and go to other jobs and things like that, are we any different than any other community this size? Is it more active, less active? Do we have any more challenges here, or we're in the same kind of situation that most communities are?
So let me answer that in a couple of ways. In terms of challenges, I think the challenges are the growth, development, and the target hazards that exist in the community and preparing an on-call force to deal with those. In terms of the on-call nature of the department, I'd say compared to many other similar-sized New Hampshire communities that we've looked at, that the department is slightly healthier and more active than most.
Well, I don't know. I'm still looking at, what's turnover? Let's use the word turnover.
Yeah.
Is that what you just answered, or is that?
Well, I guess I indirectly answered that in a very broad brushstroke, but we've seen turnover that is far higher in other comparable agencies than it is here. That goes to the organizational culture, the leadership provided by the chief. You know, I mean, as we were sort of doing our field visit and coordinating things with the chief and the staff here, we got the impression it's a very well put together, organized organization that, gee, if we lived in the community, we'd be proud to come knock on the door.
Thank you.
And that's not always the case.
Okay. Then I guess I'd sum up with just saying that we have some major financial issues facing the town in the near future. Road repairs and repaving, Copley landfill issues, the library. I just think it's important that the taxpayers be made aware of the necessity for a new fire department to include building and personnel so that they may prioritize their decisions when it comes time to vote. I think that's important to get out. So I want to thank you, gentlemen, for coming tonight. We appreciate it.
Thank you. You're welcome. Okay.
And if we have any other questions, we appreciate it that you're standing by.
All right. Sounds good. Have a good night.
You too. Okay, let's move on to the approval of the minutes from November 13th. There were some spelling and grammatical errors that were noted. They've been changed. Does anybody have any other comments?
Move we approve as amended.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Okay, under old business, we have a Copley update.
Okay, since the last meeting, there was a meeting held on November 15th at the Northampton School. No, at the Northampton Town Hall, as a Copley update with the EPA representatives and DES doing presentations, updating the public on the status of the site at this point. The meeting was a little more contentious than some of the others that we've held at the Bethany Church. And predominantly it was from other towns, not necessarily from Greenland. Hampton has a big issue with their water, with concerns about aquarium water. Possibly being impacted by Copley, possibly by a car wash. It's hard to know. So that kind of started off the meeting more of a contentious atmosphere with the EPA. But I think things are still going along in that vein, the way they will. Our efforts on the water line are totally independent of what EPA rules or requests of equipment. If we continue on that, pushing that as a preventative measure rather than as a result of, I think it'll be a win on both sides.
The only thing to add is we had a chance to speak very briefly with the city attorney in Portsmouth.
Yep.
Because on the $200,000 grant for study, there was a feedback from state officials that they wanted to see other alternatives considered. So we asked them to sit down with us in a meeting so we could scope out what those other alternatives might be for study. And
Yep.
they've agreed that they'd be glad to sit down with us and scope
Yep,
that
and I
out.
got an email now from the attorney secretary looking for dates that would work.
Yes.
Okay, so you two are going to,
Yep.
follow up on that?
I just had one more thought that we should put into that, and that is the town owns several parcels in that whole general study area. And what we should do is make sure that we provide Underwood with all the material we have on those town-owned parcels to see what impact, if any, they might have on the study alternatives.
Okay. Okey dokey. Let's move on to the fire department roof analysis report. Again, I have to assume everybody here has read because we can't talk to each other. So I'm assuming that everybody had the chance to peruse the report. It appears that Terry and Associates have laid out 4 options for us. Does anybody like to discuss any of those? Chip, since this is your baby?
Well, obviously, the concerns of the roof that's presently there really may not be salvageable because we don't know. There's just too many unknowns. So replacing the roof may be the best way to go. I think what we need to do, though, is to move very quickly forward and get pricing.
Already got it. It came in today. The fire station roof is gonna be $60,000 to $75,000. And what they're worried about, why it's such a big range, is how long it's gonna take to strip that roof off.
Well, it's all going off the bid anyway, but.
All right,
Well,
Yeah.
this is the one company.
Can I ask you a question? Is that based on option 1, option 2?
No, that is the one based on the Butler building, coming in, stripping that roof right down to the metal, and putting up the metal with a pitched roof, and putting a metal roof on top of that.
Okay, because my question regarding the first option, which is the one you're talking about, is the drawback paragraph under the roofing option.
Yeah.
They didn't know whether or not there was a lot of rusting going on the metal part of it. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Right, and when I spoke to, he doesn't see, there's no signs of any water on those joists on the inside, visible to the eye. He really doesn't see a problem with that.
Okay.
It's mainly the sheathing, if I remember right.
Yeah.
It's the sheathing that's got the original roof. That leaked from probably about 6 months after installed.
Okay.
And they just sprayed right
Right
over the
on
metal.
homeowner, yeah.
So what they have to do is strip that down to the metal, replace the metal, remove the insulation, and, basically put a metal framed roof on top of the existing metal joists, cross members that are up there.
All right, that's 60 to
So
70.
is that number 3? Removal of the existing spray-applied urethane system and placement of new rigid insulation in the existing deck pans with a uniform rigid insulation of the entire roof and the installation of a TPO
Right.
EDM
So in other words, which
membrane
option?
roof system,
This is gonna be the one where we get the pitch that we're looking for to shed.
maintaining the existing roof slope.
No, this is gonna be a brand new roof that's gonna be pitched to get rid of the snow.
It also requires the removal.
It's actually option 1.
I just don't have the thing in front of me.
Okay.
Under roofing options, not number 1.
Right,
Yeah,
all right, I see.
here.
Only so when I do up a bid, so I know how to word this. This is like technical.
I think the best way to go to save the building, what is there, 1% pitch on that roof? It's terrible.
Well, what you do is you go with your metal, you go with insulated metal panels too, which
Yeah.
may actually be the better way to go. On top of your roof with a new frame. Did they include engineering when they gave you that price or not?
No, they got the copy of this. I gave them the engineer report.
Okay, so all they have is the engineer report, there's no engineering done on that.
No.
No, he went by their recommendations, he called up Butler himself and got prices on that roofing
Is this
system.
gonna be a kit just what Butler puts together?
Yep.
Okay. So it is actually an engineered roof?
Right, it's all through Butler Building.
Yep,
I don't wanna look like Chip Huzzy put a roof on it.
No, because that's what this guy recommended.
Okay, yep. And I guess the only other things we got left really to do is get the siding situated, the windows, and the repairs that Jim recommended, the building priced out. Bob, you wanted to say something?
If I can.
Yeah.
I'm looking at this report. According to these two gentlemen who just left here, there's quite a few problems with the base of that building out there. And I'm just wondering if that is sufficient enough to warrant the replacing of that roof, investing that kind of money.
Well, it's still gonna be a town building once the fire department.
Well, no, Bob's real thing is it a tear down?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's saying, but we haven't even finished pricing it up yet.
That's a lot of money.
It's not for that size building.
Well, I mean, you read the report here, and they're telling us that, the doors need replacing, this needs replacing,
Well, one thing, Bob, is that I don't believe there's any consideration of continuing to use it as the fire station if a new fire station is
That's
proposed.
fine. So my contention is, why invest that kind of money if we're gonna get a new station?
Well,
Because you need to still fix the
It'll
building.
the new station will likely be where Public Works currently is, and Public Works will take over that building.
I was gonna say, to me, this is really a two-stage thing, which is if we fix the roof, then we preserve the building long enough to develop an adaptive reuse. And that phase two on the reuse is when we fix the inside stuff.
Makes sense.
Right.
Retro.
We still should probably get all the prices together, Paul.
Yeah, I can definitely get those together. That's a good question.
So do you want an RFP for the roof along with the siding and the windows?
Yeah, because you're gonna do the siding, you wanna do the windows at the same time. And then the other stuff being fixed, we can.
Well, my thought on that, Chip, is, let's suppose that we have an adaptive reuse that wants different windows and siding that's changed, and depending upon the adaptive reuse. That if you replace a window that's there now and it's in the wrong place, why did we just do that?
Right.
I absolutely understand what you're saying on the roof, which is we're trying to preserve it overall. But everything else, the interior repairs, the windows, siding, why don't we wait till we figure out the reuse and then design for the reuse? Because I think, granted, the windows are not great, but it isn't like we're gonna cause the deterioration the roof is gonna cause. And we just don't know what the town will let us do for a reuse. We have an idea, but we just don't know.
I don't know if the town will give us a new fire station right now.
Well, that's right.
But that's why I was looking at those. Windows are relatively inexpensive, you cut them in later, but that still has to go through engineering to do that.
About the steel beams, the bottom of the steel beams on the door side, have we looked at that at all? Had somebody look at them?
I still think we ought to get it priced out so we know what we're jumping into. The RFP should probably go for the roof, and then Paul can get those other figures to us the next meeting.
Okay.
That's all we need is ballparks.
Right, now here's the next ballpark. Okay, are we looking to do any of this by an encumbrance this year?
That's too big a number.
That was gonna be my question. So obviously,
Should we have Butler just come down and do a survey of the building?
We need to put it out for an RFP. If we have too many people coming up with prices, it's gonna cloud the RFP process.
okay, next problem. Okay, the more we add onto the project, the closer we get to our $100,000 bonding. Even if we choose not to bond it, we still have to go through that 60% vote. We want this to be an under $100,000 project.
Right.
Okay?
That's per year, correct?
Yeah.
Per hour.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
That way, you're talking about, is this a tear down? We get all the information, then we definitely know, no, it's not. The building's worth saving.
Okay.
And we just,
But what I'm trying not to do is get a roof and the beams and the doors and the windows and the siding and all of a sudden we're over 100,000 and we're at a 60%.
well, I think we get the roof done this year, we'd be doing good.
You need
In
2018.
18.
2018, yeah.
Okay. He's saying this year.
All right, well, I think that's what you're saying, right? Get the
Yes.
roof.
Right, but the point is that as we go through the budget process, we would have to put this in as saying, we're trying to keep it under 100,000, we're preserving a building, we don't know what's gonna happen, we're just making it available for reuse.
Right. And at least having this range of 60 to 75,000, the board can determine for a warrant article what number to plug in.
Yes.
Because January 10th is when we really kind of have to wrap up that. I mean, we still get 6 weeks, but we want to start to think about what totals are going to look like.
And that was the price of them taking care of all the disposal
Okay,
to the, that insulation.
bottom line price,
Yeah.
okay.
And that's substantial.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so to me, I think what we should be asking for in this is simply preserving the roof.
I agree.
Okay. Anything else?
I agree.
I'll give you you get the term out of the report there.
I've got the report right here.
What we definitely want to not do is get the screws using the assumed.
No, I told them I didn't want the screwed roof.
The
On that
retrofit
bid.
system,
Yeah,
The-
standard seat.
I actually got it.
the retrofit system called the slope build-up system. Subframing system uses a standing seam metal roof for the watertight membrane.
I'll get you an easier one. I got it at home.
Okay.
All right, so can we, agree to move forward on this and
Yep.
get the wheels
I can
rolling?
prepare an RFP to get that out, and then I'll count this in as one of the potential warrant articles. Right now, I'm in the process of putting a list together of the board,
Okay,
of the potential warrant articles that have been discussed through the year, what their impact would be.
okay. So we can get a motion to,
Right, and just as we do that, as we come into December, anything that we can encumber, even if it's just for engineering, to get that number as small as possible. Okay, in other words, let's suppose you had to have an engineering service in here. If we can pay for that engineering service before it goes out, then we can encumber. I'd rather make a $75,000 project a $55,000
Okay.
if we possibly can.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, and we'll be meeting on Tuesday, December 26th. So the final payroll will be in at that point, and I'll be able to really drill down to this is what is left.
okay.
Jess, you know what we're talking about with encumbrances?
Yes.
You do? Okay.
Okay. You want a motion on that?
No, I don't think we need a
Okay.
motion because you're not approving any warrant article yet,
No, okay.
which I've got a direction to go in.
Okey-doke. Next item is Great Bay Drive West. I am again assuming the board has read the email of November 16th from Phil McDonald of Underwood Engineering to Tom and Allison Brackett, CC to Karen and Paul Hayden. Everybody has a chance to read that?
As of today, I haven't received the updated memorandum of understanding.
You haven't?
No, I've not.
Okay.
I haven't
I
heard
mean,
nothing from
it appears that the meeting was amicable and it went well, and Mrs. Brackett called me and expressed her concerns, the main of which was that the road be constructed properly, which I don't think anybody here on the board wants something done haphazardly, so, I assured her that the board would be in line with that. I don't have a problem with the other numbered items in the email, but would make note that the Board of Selectmen do not control their right to develop their property. That's done by the planning board, that's not our issue. But I guess we should wait for the MOU to come down and we'll.
Yeah, so
We don't do MOUs with citizens. We're not going to do an MOU with a citizen.
okay.
We don't?
No, that's with another government, another entity. No, we don't do memorandum of understanding with citizens. if they have a proposal, this is zoning ordinance, it applies to them, okay? And depending upon what they have to propose, we certainly can listen. But no, we don't bind a future board of selectmen, we don't bind a planning board, we don't do anything like that. No, we're not going to do any sort of memorandum.
Okay, so that's, Just not something
It's
that's
flat out illegal.
okay. Then we're not gonna wait for an MOU.
Well, no, think about it.
I didn't know it was illegal. I mean, I don't think any of the rest of the board.
Well, think about it, you know, they would
We
like
had
to.
already asked them to sign one, right?
Well,
That was
no,
for us, their understanding that a temporary construction easement, and then the memorandum of understanding that we would continue to maintain that area.
no, we were looking for a temporary construction easement. And then at that point, it's on town-owned property and we maintain it. It's not a memorandum of understanding, ever. Okay, it's a temporary construction easement if they choose to grant it.
Okay, I mean, you can't
So
do
then we
something
can
that's
just move
illegal.
forward. The new plans were drawn. Paul has the ones for the plans of the building. And for the bid documents, it has gone out to bid with 2 alternatives for Great Bay Drive West. One constructing it for the 18 feet.
Yes, which he said he'd allow us, the 18 feet wide. That's it.
Built to town specifications. Obviously not the width of town it can be a 50-foot right-of-way.
So it'd be the 3 drains, that low point where our issue is being built up.
I never have seen Phil's plans. I don't know what he proposed.
I actually have them. She's got them locked up into a drawer I can't get into much.
Okay,
Because I have no place to put them in my box because of the size. So they're in that cabinet by the safe.
okay.
All right, so you
Alright.
can get a copy of those plans and put it in everybody's box.
I would have to go someplace, our machine would copy those, right?
Right, or ask Phil McDonald for a reduced size set.
A PDF is fine. I'm
Right.
sure he did electronically. Just please send us a
Yeah.
PDF.
And the bid document has been advertised and gone out.
PDF, electronic.
PDF, thank you, Chip.
Hey, Paul, don't feel bad, you know.
That's all right, I'm used to it with one of these guys.
These are young folks.
They're just jealous of my computer skills, plain and simple.
Really?
Hey, Bob,
PESEEF, I agree.
you know, that's it.
But, and then the second alternative on West for the bid is a shim and overlay. So that is, at that point when the bid was being produced, we didn't have any kind of resolution. So the bid has gone out with add alternate of just an overlay.
All right, so you're getting a bid both ways now.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and then when you get those plans unlocked, leave them in my office afterwards then.
All right,
Because residents will come in to take a look at it, or other contractors.
no, that's
may come
fine.
in.
The only place we had, I didn't want them to get ruined. I put them in there, if she's not here, I can't get to them.
Okay.
So I do want to get one thing straight though, so for future reference. We cannot do an MOU with any resident. The Board of Selectmen cannot do MOUs with any resident.
No.
Okay. Well, you're the lawyer, I don't know like we do. I don't think anybody else here knew that
Want me to
either.
spell it for you?
I understand.
Okay?
No wonder it takes so long at your meetings.
Wow! You bust this long,
I know. You'll get me
Okay.
back.
The next item on the agenda is the request to carry over vacation time. By Paul, right?
Yes, I'm asking to carry 11 more days over that I would use.
I don't have a problem with that.
Unpaid.
Which I would use by April 1st.
Okay. I don't have a problem with that. I know that your time is consumed by the weather, so you really have to work with Mother Nature, and I don't see a problem with that at all.
All right.
Anybody else?
No problem.
No objection.
All right, so we'll entertain a motion.
No, I'm taking that.
Do we need a motion?
Yes.
Yes.
Because it's not an amendment to personnel policy, but selectmen have the right to override any of the policies. So we would need a motion. And this was done a few years, actually it's been twice since I've been here. Amy Bauer had requested to carry over some extra days when she was taking a long trip to South Africa. And the board granted that. And Officer Young at one point hadn't used up his, so he was requested to carry it over through like April 1st, and that was approved.
Okay. I move to approve the request by the property maintenance supervisor to carry over 11 additional vacation days to April 1st, 2018.
And I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, any other old business? Does anybody have anything else?
Yeah, I do have something as long as Paul's still here. I think that as a board, we may have dropped the ball on the striping of the parking lot. We probably should have given a little more thought of what was gonna be happening. I had one plan given to me, but it was too late to act on it. That would have given us 5 or 6 more parking spaces, plus would have had all the traffic going in one direction. There would have been a buffer along the roadway.
Transfer station traffic
Yeah.
coming out.
And, I mean, too late now, but before we do that again, it might be a good idea to look at that, and this is maybe new business too, but I went to the New Hampshire Municipal Association last week and went to a program on meeting with other entities involved in our roadways, because we're putting a lot of money out on roads. So if the city of Portsmouth is going to be coming out and digging up roads for waterworks, we need to know about it in advance.
Like they did on Tunnel Lane.
Yeah. So it's something that we ought to.
Yeah.
Now, when I was with the gas company, any road that was recently paved, we weren't allowed to dig for 5 years without a penalty.
Right.
Other than an emergency.
Yeah.
Right. But just to put, like, say you told us Portsmouth Ave was getting repaved. We would go to every door and put a flyer in there. You have to have, if you wanted a gas service, it's gotta be done before this date, or you can't have it for 5 years.
Right, and certain towns have ordinances like that, Greenland does not.
Yeah, actually, we've looked at it somewhat at the planning board. And the most heavy-handed ordinance in the state is Concord.
Yeah.
And so we were thinking of adopting a Concord style.
Right.
That's who gave the lawyer who did that, that's the one who presented.
And we had to get a permit for every hole we dug, so the town knew exactly where it was, what size the hole was, and then we were responsible for any sinkholes or anything like that in the future.
Yeah. And what Paul can do is what I used to do is when we started to put together the list, I would call Stratham and Portsmouth, see what they were doing to see if it worked. Stratham, like when they were doing Tidewater, we were able to piggyback onto that to get Depot. But yeah, and it just takes calls on, where you're going to be, because if one company can be mobilized to connect, it's fabulous.
Okay.
And it's a selectman's ordinance because of that, so we don't have to go to town meeting with it. We can just adopt it whenever we're ready.
Is the parking lot the same as it was before?
Yep.
Well, and everything, so it's just me already.
Yeah, we set it up the same way we did before. And the way it is set up, Jim, the parking is almost a one-way if you follow the lines. You're supposed to pull in this way and come out around like that. The only difference is, if you notice, in the outside parking spaces, we eliminated one, so they don't drive across the grass to leave here.
Oh, yeah.
So we did move that down.
But, yeah, for the most part, so.
Yeah, but everything's set up the same way.
Somebody didn't notice the lines weren't there tonight.
Who, you?
No.
Chairman, you got new hearing aids.
I'm telling you right now, there used to be a line there.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, so he's parking the first one.
New glasses.
But he can hear us now.
Thanks, Tony. Okay. Anybody else have any other old business they'd like to bring up?
I have two things, because it's really old, one of them. the back door fall, before I forget. Well, it's gonna be warm, this big one back here.
Yeah.
It's getting the rust out on the bottom. I just know that that's about a $10,000-15,000 door to replace. We probably should get that this week. At least a coat of paint, clean it up and get rid of a coat of paint.
Yeah, we can't replace it because that was a budget item for last year that got denied. But we can clean it up and paint it.
And bring it up again.
Back here?
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Maintenance.
Before I forget again, the other thing I wanted to bring up, way back, I talked about possibly looking at TIFs. The other thing I came across was RSA 79E, which I thought, not really much discussion tonight, but I was looking at it more redevelopment of the old commercial areas in town, making that available for someone who wanted to do that.
Right, economic revitalization?
Yes,
Yeah,
We adopted that 2 years ago.
we did.
I think you did.
From, it goes from Ocean Road to the bridge.
Okay, another portion of that was preserving historic homes that you can also offer the same discount to people. Because I do know that occasionally homes have been torn down in the town of Greenland due to the expense of renovating them. And it might be an option to keep them from being disappearing. I really don't want to become the Portsmouth Historical District, but, because we don't have no.
Thank you.
But I would like to give, I think that'd be the best way to handle it if we want to preserve an older home, would be to give them a discount on the taxes for 5 years, so.
Okay. I can write that as a draft article.
No, the house, not you.
We did it
No, the
2 years ago, we did the the barn one. But we
There's a
haven't done
barn
the
one.
historic home, what?
There's a barn statute.
Yeah, we did the barn one a couple years ago.
Yeah.
But we didn't do the historic home one.
No, we have done discretionary easements. We have, and thank you, by the way, for that material. I think you know.
I know, but he came in on Wednesday to pick up the tax card there.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, we can take a look at all the 79 discretionary things to see if there's something we should be doing.
Okay.
We can certainly do that.
Yeah, I just looked at it quickly and said that some of that is not such a bad idea.
Right.
It's better than being the historic police.
Yeah, no, I.
Now, are you talking houses that are actually registered under historical?
I can't remember what the actual law is. There is an
I think it is
age.
age limits.
That particular one, you don't have to be on the National Register.
All right.
You just have to be historically significant locally.
One of the other warrant articles, while we're just throwing these out quickly, is another one that towns have the ability to consider this year, whether we want to see it on the warrant or not, is does Greenland want to allow Keno in restaurants in Greenland?
So what,
It's a,
so that'd be what, the truck stop and?
correct, but it's an authorization
Subway.
that has to be done by
What bread do you want?
individual
Which
town.
ticket do you want?
So it's appearing on most all, or several different towns, and this is your, I'll throw that on as a draft, and it's a majority vote if it makes it on. Or tell me now, don't even bother.
I spoke with the truck stop and they weren't interested.
Oh, you did?
Oh, they weren't?
Yeah, because I'm interested.
Oh,
What if we bring that up to the meeting at the vets?
you're not a
You
public,
went on a.
Oh, not a restaurant.
Restaurant.
Yeah.
You got the country club. Actually, both of them. One doesn't do much.
do you want me to draft the article for Greenland?
Wait a minute, Don?
That was what I was gonna say. You're gonna put it on a ballot, you're either gonna put a black mark or don't put a black mark. If they say no, it's no. If they,
Right.
why go through it with,
I agree with.
somebody could come in a year from now, want to put a restaurant in a bar and have Keno and say, oh, now we're gonna do it all over again.
Right.
We're gonna do it again. I mean,
Right,
it's-
this would be the year to do it when everybody's doing it, and there'll be press about it.
Right.
I agree.
Great.
Yeah.
All right.
I love Keno.
All all the managers are all, the listserv is buzzing with, is anyone doing an article for this and an
I
article
have no
for that?
idea.
No,
I heard it was an old person game.
I play it every weekend.
Like I
I have to
said,
go to Massachusetts to play it every weekend.
can we
Any
close the
other
vote
old
down?
business from anybody here? Okay, I was gonna bring,
Oh, Ralph?
I got a question, and it's really not a question, it's a liability issue I think we got going. We put new sidewalks in, we paved And I think someone's gonna be rolling their ankles over the way that it steps off.
Over
Right now
out
it's-
here in front.
Out front,
Oh, yeah.
mine,
I noticed that too.
yeah, I think,
No, I try to get some loom. I'm gonna talk to you about that. The two places where we usually buy dust, they took it out. It's gone for the winter, so I need some loom.
we just
You
get
are
that
still
taken
selling it right
care of
now?
before
Okay.
someone gets hurt.
Right.
No, that's on my list.
Right, and,
Yeah.
and for us, there isn't compacting the edges with gravel?
No, he did the outside. This needs loom.
Yeah.
They do gravel.
So they don't, that wasn't in the contract of taking
No.
care of that, okay.
Okay.
I'm done.
Good.
For now.
Okay, I was going to bring something up about the heaters at the transfer station. But Chip asked me if I could wait until we got the responses in from,
The
or the
bids.
bids in. And so I will acquiesce to my colleague and wait till they come in unless you want me to.
Well, I can tell you, we're already $1,500 less because the electrical doesn't need a new panel.
You what?
I knew you'd like that.
He didn't,
No, I didn't.
coming
Oh.
in cheaper.
$1,500 cheaper, we didn't have to put a new panel in.
Okay, all right,
When we get to that, we need more discussion. I'm not
Yeah.
thinking this is a good idea at all.
right.
Yeah, the
And,
people at the dump don't seem to be all that concerned
No,
about it.
You know.
all right, so I'll bring it up, seeing as how everybody's discussing it anyway.
was approached.
But I was approached by a lot of the people at the transfer station, and they don't think, and they're taxpayers too, so they have a right to, you
Well,
know.
let me put it this way, so everyone understands my standing on this.
Mhm.
You have employees, the youngest one's 61 years old, working in some pretty tough environments up there some days. And that's why I'm pushing for it, is because we bought an air conditioning system for the fire station because it was tough for them during the summer. We redid the upstairs to the police station because they wanted that done. And yeah, the employees say they're gonna tough it out, but that's exactly their words, they'll tough it out. And I just think it's unfair to have.
But we have
those
a
guys-
heated building. If they're
Yeah.
cold, they can go in there and
That's
warm
right.
up. I'm against it.
I'll either that or I'll do this, if you wanna shut it down, the Board of Selectmen goes up there the first day that's under 20 and works the whole day.
I did.
No,
I worked there for 2 years.
There's no heaters on the back of the garage.
Yeah.
The garbage truck down
Can I have heat and AC on my
Those guys are
lawn?
riding around, I mean, that's their job.
You got heat and AC in your truck, didn't you?
I never run it. I don't run the AC. That'd be the stupidest thing I could do on a hot summer day.
Mhm.
I'm in.
But anyway, it just so the board knows that the vast majority of the workers up there, in fact, there's only one worker, to my knowledge, that wants it. The rest of them think it's a waste of money. I just want to bring that up, okay? And I did work up there for 2 years, so I know what the conditions are like. They can be
It's
chilly,
pretty
but-
brutal up there, that's why I brought up, that's why I say wait till we see what the prices come back at.
and I'm 73, so I.
You're right up there with the mid-range there.
All right, so I just wanted to bring that up.
Teenager, yeah.
Okay, so no other old business, new business. Does anybody, what do we have on the new business?
Review of town administrators. Yes, report.
Thank you.
Nothing.
Any comments on the TA's report? There being none, we'll move on to the equalization study.
Okay, this is the annual report that we do by reviewing all the sales in town, what they sold for versus what they were assessed at. And the result has shown that our equalization rate has dropped to 86.6%. So on average, properties are selling for 13.5 cents higher than what their assessed value is. The COD, which is that coefficient of dispersion, which makes sure that if it's 13.5% too low for small houses, it's the same for middle of the range, large houses, industrial, that stays the same. So that should be at a 10, and ours is at an 8.82. It's still fine and it's still within DRA's parameters, but it's showing that it is getting off
When
kilter a
does it
little
get
bit.
below DRA's parameters? At what point?
I think 6. But we are scheduled for our revaluation in 18, and that will all be brought back to where it belongs. Some of the larger homes are not selling for that large of a difference. The small homes, yes, the small homes are flying as fast as they can small. Well, most of them, sorry.
Well, what are you asking?
Whatever, you make me an offer.
What are those?
It's the rowdy neighbors.
Yeah.
Okay, any questions on the
Yeah, and
equalization?
once the board approves this, then it goes into DRA with their annual pink sheet, and then they will certify our rate.
Okay, so do you understand?
I do. I read
Okay.
through that.
Yeah, and these are all the sales that we considered as qualified. They can't be sales to an abutting neighbor, they can't be family sales, they can't be foreclosures.
I thought there was a family sale on there.
Then it's,
No reverse mortgage.
Well, it's in the report, but it wasn't considered in the study.
yeah, it may not have been considered, or if it was,
All right, I mean, I'm just,
yeah, for the most part, those get nailed out too.
okay, motion?
I move to approve the 2017 equalization study and submit to the Department of Revenue.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Veterans credit.
This is for a resident who qualifies based on year of service and residency from Sleepy Hollow Drive.
Move we approve the requested veterans tax credit for the resident of 53 Sleepy Hollow Drive.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. I would like to, under new business, bring up a credit card issue. And I'll just read you what the police chief. She said, I'm wondering if we could somehow move forward with getting a few town credit cards. I'm trying to set up a web-based fax line, but they need a credit card to bill monthly. Further, there are always items that we are buying that can't be invoiced. Myself, Don, Carol have always used our own personal money and then put in for reimbursement. I don't want to ask a new admin assistant to do that, and quite frankly, we shouldn't need to. So she said, is there anything we can do about this? So.
I would not be objecting with a strong policy with one credit card. Several, having, the way she put it, having a few credit cards, it's too hard for an internal control. We maintain credit card accounts now with Lowe's for business, building materials, and Staples for office materials. There are times when people have had to do flights or they purchase things, they find a better price online. Liz has used her credit card, I've used my credit card, Paul's used his credit card. So I don't have a problem with a credit card, but I would have a problem if departments could then just get several credit cards. Because that could become a quick nightmare.
Okay, comments, anybody?
So what credit cards does the town currently have? You have Lowe's?
Lowe's and Staples.
Yep.
And Wex for gas.
Okay.
And that is all.
So
Exxon.
So if we had one additional credit card in the name of town, be the Visa, MasterCard, or something, and it was kept here, there's no reason why any department can't come in here and use it when necessary.
Correct. And then they supply the receipts immediately.
Yeah.
We go through the bank,
What?
go through the bank prospect.
We could go through any bank, that doesn't matter, but I would not be in favor of, it's totally up to the board, but I think you're creating an internal control problem if you have, because once one department is allowed to get a few credit cards, another department will get a few credit cards, and another department will get a few credit cards.
No, instead, every department can come in here and justify to you why they need to use it. Simple as that.
Okay,
It's not like you aren't here.
right. Okay,
So it's up to the board.
So move for one credit card for town use.
To be administered by the town administrator.
okay. Any, do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Second, any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. So moved. Okey dokey, let's see. Abatements.
Okay, we have 3 abatements this week. There's probably about 12 more that will come all at once that the assessor is working with right now, which are all Bramber Green. For some of the homes have a room over the garage that was categorized as a finished room, and some were finished it, some didn't finish it. And so there's a couple of questions on those that there'll be adjustments. And on the ranch style was shown as finished half stories, where some of them have the finished half story and others have a cathedral base, which you couldn't see from outside. So those will all be coming through. The first one today is just to correct the utility rate for Portland Natural Gas. The first half bill was inadvertently charged the state education tax. Unfortunately, the town tax collector's system, she has to individually hand code the utilities every tax bill, and this one got mixed.
Okay.
That, they got charged it. So this is to return them their $3,066.
Motion?
I move to abate $3,066 for Portland Natural Gas, 4-5.
Second.
I have a motion, a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, the second one was for a veterans credit that didn't get applied for the second tax bill, even though it was a late March approval. April 1st was the deadline that didn't get put on. So this is $250 for Linda Verwerder, tax map 1410.
Okay. Motion?
Move to abate $250 for Linda Verwerder, tax map R1410.
Second.
I have a motion, a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, and then the other one is the Condex on Post Road. It's map R33A. It's the one that one side is like a stucco pinkish, and the other one is a vinyl siding. Well, there's a garage section that is under the vinyl siding section. And when that was drawn out, when it was condoed a couple years ago, that was included with the vinyl siding side. All the one color was drawn like that. In reality, when it was being sold, it came to our attention that that storage area that's in vinyl siding actually belongs to the pink side. And so this is to correct it only for the 2017 tax year to the prior owner.
Well explained.
Yeah.
Motion?
I move to abate $252 plus interest to Bruce Craver, tax map R33A.
Second.
I have a motion, a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, we've got a few signature sheets to go around.
Yes. Okay, the annual holiday luncheon.
Okay, what we'd like to do is close for an hour from 12 to 1 on December 14th for the annual town office luncheons potluck. Selectmen are invited. It's generally an hour of just relaxing and some fun time.
What is this?
You're always there.
Thursday.
December 14th. It's the week before Christmas because the bookkeeper is going to be off that following whole week.
All right, may I have a motion?
I move we approve the requested holiday luncheon for December 14th.
Second.
I have a motion, a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion.
I'm
Yeah.
all-
The police department comes over and
Yeah.
it ends up being a good time. And it's
Did I
at
hear
no
a bunch
cost to
of
the
ayes or
town.
just one? Okay, any other, one more aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes.
Oh, you want to give them people.
Okay. Any other new business anybody would like to bring up?
We still have one more.
We do. Oh, yeah. Meeting for December 25th.
Monday, December 25th is our next, is the December 2nd meeting. So I'd like to hold it on Tuesday, this 26th, to at least do the manifests and the encumbrances. This encumbrances can't really be determined completely until close to that year end, and they have to be done before December 31st.
Okay.
Move to hold the Board of Selectmen meeting scheduled for Monday, December 25th, 2017, on Tuesday, December 26th, 2017.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, I got one thing to say. Charlotte, cancel the cemetery meeting in December. We always have it that Tuesday.
We're doing it at night, you know.
No, the cemetery meeting's 7 o'clock on Tuesday night.
Okay.
I just want to let Charlotte know not to schedule the cemetery meeting.
Okay.
Okay. Any questions on, for your information packet? Okay. Any further issues?
Just one thing, as we're coming up on the first meeting with the Budget Committee on Thursday, I saw the agenda for the Budget Committee that has it scheduled till about 10:30 at night.
Nah, it won't be that way.
Well, I would just suggest to the Budget Committee that you've bitten off more than you can chew in that meeting, number one. And dial it back a little bit. You have some important things to hear from the fire department, some important things to hear from the library. You have bitten off too much for that first meeting. Okay, so please dial it back. I assure you, after 9 o'clock, it isn't going to get any better. It's going to get a whole lot worse.
We'll see.
All right, well, I'm scheduled to be the last section, so
Yeah, you
if
are.
it gets too late,
Yeah, we'll just cut it off.
cut it off at me and I'll do all the town administration stuff after.
Don't worry about nothing, you know?
Okay, the second thing I think we should consider, based upon what we heard with the fire department tonight, we should consider on our warrant articles, taking some money out of the ambulance fund to deal with the IT needs of the fire department over the next year. So that as we get new people on, we can at least be sure that they've got the necessary equipment to get the IT stuff up in accordance with those recommendations.
Okay.
Ralph, right?
That would
Yeah.
not be taking it out of, that would not be taxing. That would be taking it out of the existing fund for equipment.
We can't take it out until we vote on it, correct?
Yes, it has to be a warrant article.
That's
That's
what-
what he said.
That's why I'm bringing it up now,
Okay.
so that we can draw that warrant article correctly. And so in the meantime, you could talk to our IT person to see what they might recommend based on that recommendation.
Isn't our IT guy,
Same one, we both.
I know it's Doug, isn't he contracted for the fire department already?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, do you need,
But we can ask him what he thinks you need for equipment.
Okay.
Okay, because your phone is not gonna cut it.
do we need a motion for that?
No,
No, okay.
We don't see any place.
All right, so again, I urge everybody here at the Board of Selectmen, if you can make that budget meeting, it's always a good idea. It's a good idea to have the Budget Committee and I'll say it again, and the Board of Selectmen on the same page when it comes to putting things together. Agreed?
Agreed.
All right. Look at you, you just nonchalant over there.
What do you want me to do?
And Bob,
wait till Thursday.
Yeah.
Oh, he's gonna be sleeping till 6.
I'm glad you're here, but a majority of your members haven't been while we've been going through this process of building the budget. There's too much for them to understand.
And that's why Bob's here, because Bob said that's why I told him, I said, you gotta come to these things because then you can explain to them what's going on.
No, I'll cut it down.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay.
Thanks.
Good. Anything else?
I'm just mustard on the sandwich.
Mustard on the sandwich, I like that.
Been counting for the last 2 months, but I'm just mustard on the sandwich.
He's on the.
He's on the budget committee as well.
Okay, manifest.
Payroll. Number 24, in the amount of $60,831.01. Move we approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Longevity bonus, pay for leave, and selectmen stipends. Like this one's gonna fail, right?
Guaranteed.
In the amount of $25,473.98.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
General fund accounts payable, we hereby approve the attached manifest of unpaid bills detailed as of November 30th, 2017, in the amount of $2,570,288.26.
That includes $1,650,000 for the school and $781,054 for the county tax.
Okay. Got a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Anything else to come before this honorable court?
Just like that.
Huh?
Just like that. No problem.
You ain't got any choice.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn. Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.